everyone, and welcome to our Breaking Barriers panel. My name is LaChina Robinson, and I will be facilitating this discussion today on behalf of the WBCA. And we are really eager to have what we feel like is an important conversation with our coaches panel today about their journeys, becoming the first Black coach of their sport on their respective campuses, but also just their journeys overall in sport as Black men and women coaching both men's and women's college basketball. Now, I'll be honest with you, we have a lot of bio information for our coaches panel because they have done great things in their careers and have accomplished many feats. So I will not attempt to read their entire bios, but do want to give each of them a brief introduction, starting with head coach Niele Ivey, who was named head coach at Notre Dame, the Fighting Irish women's basketball program, this past April when Hall of Fame coach Muffet McGraw stepped down. Niele won a national championship at Notre Dame as a player as well as an assistant coach, and was the common link to all 9 of the program's Final Four appearances, 2 of those as a player, 7 as an assistant coach. In all, Ivey has spent 17 years in South Bend. And this season, she returns to Notre Dame after a very short stint, spending the 2019-2020 season as an assistant coach in the NBA with the Memphis Grizzlies. In addition to her playing career at Notre Dame, Niele also had a 5-year career as a player in the WNBA. And she continues to contribute buckets to the WNBA with her tutelage of some of the top draft picks over the last few years, Jackie Young, Skylar Diggins-Smith, Arike Agubawale, amongst them. Welcome, Niele. It's great to see you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Next up, we have Kenny Brooks, who just concluded his 4th season as the head coach of women's basketball for Virginia Tech. Since Kenny's arrival in Blacksburg, the Hokies have enjoyed 4 consecutive 20-win seasons. In 2020, Brooks and the Hokies were poised to make the program's first NCAA tournament appearance since 2006. I can vouch for that. I did have them in my field. But they just finished a historic 21-9 season that featured a record 11 ACC wins. The 2019-2020 Hokies accomplished a number of milestones that included the program's first ever ACC Freshman of the Year, ACC 6th Player of the Year, and 5 players named All-Academic ACC. Now, Brooks joined the Hokies after an impressive 14-season stint as the head coach at JMU, his alma mater, where he is the winningest coach in school history and went to consecutive postseason appearances as a 4-time CAA Coach of the Year. Welcome, Coach Brooks.
My pleasure to be here, China.
All right, and Coach Cooley joining us on the women's basketball side, but does coach men's college basketball at Providence. Since his hiring, Coach Cooley has led the Friars to 7 consecutive postseason tournament berths. 2019-2020, obviously, we did not have an NCAA tournament, but that stint includes a school record 5 straight NCAA tournament appearances from 2014 to 2018. He guided the team to the 2014 Big East title. And just this past season, even though there was no NCAA tournament, the Friars had the best midseason improvement of any Division I team as the squad improved from 6-6 starting to 19-12, a net ranking improvement of 119 spots. They went from 156 to 37. So you were doing some coaching. Prior to coming to Providence, Coach Cooley guided Fairfield to a record 25 wins in a MAC conference regular season title in 2011, earning him Coach of the Year honors. Welcome, Coach Cooley.
Thanks a lot for having me on. I'm honored to be on with such a prestigious group.
Well, we will kind of get right into it because we definitely want to maximize our time in this conversation. And I will say to the audience, please feel free to drop your own questions in, your own thoughts. Probably won't have time to get to them all, but we will try to address a few of them along the way. So in our first conversation, just getting into how you've each been able to break barriers as Black coaches, how do you feel like your path to head coaching has been different than maybe your white peers? And Niele, I will start with you on that.
Yeah, well, I feel like I've always known that I'd have to go above and beyond just as a young child. Just you have to be above and beyond. You have to be great. Just growing up, I think that was just kind of my upbringing from my parents. And so in the college professional realm, it's the same way. I felt like I have to be, and I have to go above and beyond my peers. make sure that I'm excellent in every way, not making mistakes. And so I think that's that's always been my approach, just in my work ethic in general, but also just the knowledge of you have to go above and beyond what probably other peers have to when they're getting into this profession.
So feeling like you had to go above and beyond maybe what the expectations were of your white peers that may be in similar positions.
Absolutely.
Coach Brooks.
Very unique. This is my path. You know, a lot of people know I started on the men's side. I was on the men's side for 10 years. I always had an inkling to want to coach on the women's side. Had an opportunity to move over as an assistant coach. And I remember at my alma mater, being an assistant coach going to the women's side. And I sat down with the head coach on the men's side at the time, and he was an African-American male. And he told me, he said, if you ever want to be a head coach, especially here, you're not going to be head coach because they already have a black male coach. And so they're not going to be able to hire 2 black males. And I didn't think that he was trying to deter me from leaving. It was just that what we kind of thought in the coaching profession back then. You know, if you get a university, they're not going to have 2 black males. You have to go find somewhere else. You have to find a unique situation for you. And fortunate for me, it was my alma mater, and I had an opportunity. Everyone knew me there. Everyone knew me. They knew me as a person, not as a black coach, not as an African-American male coach. And so then I was able to get an opportunity. And so that's my path. Definitely obstacles, as I was trying to pursue my passion, my dream. But those were things I had to think about. And but fortunate for me, it worked out.
It's really interesting to hear you say that because we often are made to feel like there's a diversity quota, right? Like you get one black face or you get one person of color and, oh, we're good. We have diversity, right? I mean, I even find that in my field where, it's definitely improved, but there was once a time where it was like, okay, if you saw 2 black women on one show, then that just was like the unicorn. And it's like, okay, we've got our face of diversity, so we don't need any more. Very interesting take there. Coach Cooley.
I mean, mine is, again, very unique as well. I mean, and I've had a lot of practice being one of very few minorities in situations where I went to college, where I was one of maybe 3 or 4 in the college for a 2-year period, where I knew I was different. And coming out of the inner city, it was very, I just wasn't there yet. I still was very urban, and I had my own biases and I had my own insecurities. And then when I got out of college and I got into teaching, I was one of only 2 black teachers. And then I had a really good training ground with Coach Skinner, as we were the first black coaching staff at Boston College. So I saw what Coach did, and I am someone who learns by looking, listening, and not saying a word. And I saw what he did, and I said, you know what, I can do that. I think I can do that. At least I thought I can do that. And he was such a great mentor to me, educate me on him being different, on the way to approach the job. So I always I wanted the people at the school when I was an assistant coach know who I was as a person, not a coach. Because most of the time we're characterized as a great personality, unbelievable recruiter. Let me tell you all something. I am a way better X and O coach than I am a recruiter. You know what I mean? Hands down, I don't even think I'm a good recruiter. But if you can communicate the right word and you can have relationship skills, that's how you get players. Yet at the end of the day, I don't want to be, just characterized as a recruiter, because 9 out of 10 times that's the hole that we're pigeoned into. You know what I mean? So as I left Boston College and was the first black coach at Fairfield, it's funny because I felt different because people didn't know how to approach, and then coming back home where I was born and raised here in the city of Providence, I always wanted to play at Providence as a high school kid. I just wasn't good enough. I thought I was. When we're young, we all think we're that person. And I always said, one day I'm going to be coaching there, one day. Lo and behold, 2011, that dream came true for me. And it is an honor to be the first and try to set the example for many other young men and women who grew up tough, who were always told they couldn't. Yet when they do get the opportunity, let's make sure we bring other people with us. So my journey was a lot, very, very unique.
Yeah, and even listening to you talk about, Boston, just knowing the dynamics there in general as it pertains to race, I'm sure was a very unique situation. But you mentioned watching Coach Skinner and how he did things. Was there something in particular that you noticed about how he carried himself or how he interacted, maybe from a race relations standpoint, that stuck with you?
Yeah, is go out of your way to let people know who you are. So many times people can't approach you, or they're afraid to approach you, and is why. I remember going for a walk with our staff, and on the staff there was Bonzi Colson. His daughter is my goddaughter, and it'd be a couple of football coaches, and we're some big brothers. But we're not small, nor are we very light complected. So we'd go for walks, and you start hearing doors lock in Chestnut Hill.
Wow.
And I'm like, damn. That's rough. We're the nicest teddy bears in America, but those are the things that we dealt with. And so it's hard to not take it personal. And I talk about this all the time. When you're young, you take it personal. And when you get to our age, you more want to educate people of change and educate them on their own insecurities and biases and have real conversations that you're not going to like.
Yeah.
And just be receptive to listening, not so much always talking.
Yeah. And we're going to come back to a couple of other things you mentioned, especially the pigeonholing in recruiting, because that is a big thing. Kenny, I want to come to you. As the push for diversity continues, and there will be more coaches breaking barriers and, finding ways to emerge on campuses that may not have had a Black head coach before, what resources do you believe are vital to the success of a coach in that position?
A lot what Ed just said. We need mentors. We need mentors. We don't necessarily need all these, these going out and talking and having seminars. We need some real life stuff. Just like Ed said with Coach Skinner, I've had people who I look up to that I can watch, who look like me, and be able to go out and educate, because we are at different levels. When I got into the business, I wasn't angry, but I was fighting for myself. I wanted to talk more. I wanted people to hear me. What I found out, I needed to listen more. I needed to listen more so I could learn my audience, learn what I need to do. And I think we learn best from our peers. So platforms like this, they're very, very valuable. One thing that the shutdown or the quarantine has shown me is that we are able to reach out and have platforms like this. We're able to talk across, airways. Look, we're in 5 different cities, and we're talking. We're having a very productive conversation, and it's through mentors. Through mentors and learning from people who look like you, who are like you, have experienced things like you. And I think the young kids will respect that, and they'll take that and they'll learn from it.
And Niele, as we talk about mentoring, you had the tutelage and a role model in Muffet McGraw, and she was a white ally, right? So we talked about Coach Skinner and what it can look like to follow in someone's footsteps, but Muffet McGraw has been someone that has been an advocate of diversity, even in my field. How can white allies like Coach McGraw and coaching peers be helpful to a coach in your position or where you were?
Yeah, well, and I'm fortunate, like you said, I've learned the power of my voice. I've learned confidence through what I've been exposed to. So I've been exposed to Coach McGraw, who has been a leader in our community, a leader in the women's game, the women's side for 20 plus years. That's somebody I pretty much learned everything from. And so she's always been an advocate for me. But I think just white allies, just sharing knowledge, educating themselves, speaking out. We all need to listen and educate ourselves, but also speaking out for us. And I think that's what I benefited from, just having her be an advocate and using her platform to talk about things that normally, white allies might not want to speak on. And she was very comfortable doing that. So I think white allies being able to share knowledge, share wisdom, and educate themselves and speak up and speak out, I think would be something great. And I'm fortunate that that was who I was surrounded by. So that's the only thing that I know.
Coach Cooley or Coach Brooks, your white allies, is there any advice that you would give on how they can help Black coaches?
you know, in our game of basketball, white or black, we are privileged to have recruited, mentored men and women of color. So we are way ahead of the game as far as what we're dealing with nationally.
Mm-hmm.
And when you sit down and you speak to your white, non-black other coaches, you just sit down and talk to them about what their players are going through and how they're looking at you and what they expect from you. You know, it's to support them. It's support them when things are not well. Ask them what's happening at their homes. Don't be afraid to go into their homes. Mm-hmm. And when you do go into homes, be incredibly sensitive, because sometimes, I know when I was recruited, I was embarrassed when my coaches came to the projects and there's roaches on the wall. But that's real life to me. Those roaches, those were my boys and girls. I mean, don't be messing with them. Don't be messing with them. I mean, especially when the lights come on. Uh-oh, you better look out. Lights come on, man. It's a party going on over there. But that is something where that's real conversation.
Yeah.
And I like real conversation. So the more that our coaches can deal with our men and women of color and have real conversation to help them, they'll be doing the game justice and those kids justice.
I want to go back to the point you were making earlier, Coach Cooley, and I'll start with you about coaches being pigeonholed as recruiting coordinator to bring those Black student athletes in. Maybe white coaches aren't as comfortable going to those homes or having those same conversations, or, you know, whatever the case may be. How would you suggest coaches avoid that, Black coaches avoid that, and try to leverage themselves to move up the ranks and be seen as more than just the Black recruiter?
Well, I know on college campuses, you have an opportunity to be interviewed every single day. Go around and talk to all the other head coaches that are in your building. Go speak to the senior women administrator. Go to the volleyball game. Go to the softball game. Have a presence on your campus. Go to the cafeteria. Go to the library. Go to the student center and let people know who you are. And then, you know, when they start seeing you, they're not seeing a recruiter. They're not seeing a coach. They're seeing a person. That's what I've always done. And I always encourage people to do. Then when you have opportunity to do a clinic, to do a camp, the head coaches should allow their assistant coaches in practice when the national media is there. And when you're out, you know, your shoot arounds, you have people in there, your coaches have to have a voice, because so many times we as head coaches, some of us, our egos are bigger than the game. And you got to check that ego at the door and help those people that are on your bench become head coaches, or encourage them to become head coaches by giving them power, by giving them a voice. And you'll have a better team because your players will respect you, the head coach, more because you respect the game, you respect your staff. Let them have a bigger voice. So now people say, oh, wow, I didn't know John could do that. Make sure you empower your people to be great overall. Communicator, skill developer, recruiter, X and O, timeouts, ask them questions during timeouts. And, you know, when you're mic'd up, that's when you have the opportunity. Us on this screen, we have a big voice, and the camera's going to follow us. Make sure your voice makes you follow your staff. That's what I always talk about.
Yeah, Kenny?
Oh, I'm going to say, as just being an assistant for the past 13 years, every year as an assistant, I wanted to get better. So that was a personal drive of mine. And so I know some coaches, some assistant coaches might be comfortable in that role as well. Like they might be comfortable just being the recruiting coordinator. I wasn't. Like the first 2 years, I was trying to figure out the lay of the land. Like what areas do I need to get better at? And so I personally was like, okay, each year I'm going to go to a clinic, like you said, Coach. I'm going to go try to find professional development. I'm going to go ask coaches, other coaches, to get information to make myself better. And I think it starts with having a personal drive to want to be better and not to be pigeonholed, because I feel like that's exactly what happens. I lost my train of thought, but like, that's the biggest thing, is to make sure that you're trying to step out of your comfort zone every year to get better at something. I personally took it personal sometimes my first years. And I think I was like that young coach. If Coach McGraw, if we're playing, scrimmaging against the guys, and she tells the two other assistants, oh, coach, why don't you take the practice squad, and the other coach, you'll take the first team, and I'm on the side, and I'm not taking a team. So that used to drive me crazy. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna work on X's and O's. I'm gonna work on X's and O's, and I'm gonna work on this portion of the offense or the defense or whatever that case may be. So I took it personal, and so every year I found different areas that I knew that I needed to grow in. And now, 12, 13 years later, I feel like I have a bigger playbook because I challenged myself back years ago. And so I think it's a personal initiative, it's a personal drive as well. But every year you got to find a different area in order for you to grow. So you're not 12 years in the game and you're just a really good recruiting coordinator, because you can get the players, but then you're going to have to make sure like your staff around you can do the other things. You want to be good and great at every aspect of coaching.
Mm-hmm. And let me just say to your point about kind of your role with Notre Dame, only because I've seen you guys so much in action. When Muffet McGraw was there, I mean, during the games, you could visibly see you and her having conversations if a team scored, talking about adjustments. Like, it was definitely something that I think left the impression of everyone watching, like, oh, she really relies on Carol Owens, or she really relies on Niele Ivey, because there was a visible connection during the games, adjustments, things like that really, really stood out. Coach Brooks, anything to add on that?
I think both coaches hit it right on the head.
Okay.
I think, as Neil said, as an assistant coach, you can't just be happy with what you're given. You have to go the extra mile. Okay, yeah, your duties may be this, this, and this, but hey, somebody's down there working out and it's not your kid, go down there, show the coach that that's what you want to do. And in return, you'll get better. You'll continue to get better. All right, if you are a great recruiter, don't get mad at that. Okay, be a great recruiter, but just like Ed said, go learn your X's and O's. Go learn everything, because it comes down to the point where we all want to win. And you need to show your head coach that you can handle the responsibilities that's going to take you to another level as a program. And when you can do that, and when you see that, then like Ed says, as a head coach, you need to give your assistants more and more responsibilities. Let them chase their dreams, give them opportunities. Don't just give them opportunity in closed practice. Give them an opportunity when the AD walks in. Give them an opportunity when someone's watching them. And I've been very fortunate. I've been very fortunate that I've had 5 assistant coaches who have gone on to be head coaches. 3 of them have been African-American females. And, I want them to have the opportunity. I want to hear their voice. I don't want them to just go and help the young ladies in a certain area. I want them to be able to help them in any area, whether it's basketball, whether it's, getting their hair done, whether it's, anything, any schoolwork, anything they need to do. I want them to be able to go to my assistant coaches, and particularly the female coaches, so they can continue to get better, so we can continue to grow the game.
When your student athletes see how you are valuing the input of those Black female assistants, that has an impression on them, right? In terms of what their value could be one day on a staff, or even how you see the value of Black women in that space, which is also very powerful. Before we change gears just a little bit, Kenny, I have just one question for you. Obviously, it's very unique situation with you being a Black man in women's basketball. What maybe different challenges has that presented?
Oh wow, it's a myriad of challenges. When I took over, and I became the head coach at James Madison University, the red carpet wasn't rolled out. It wasn't rolled out, and I didn't have any peers. Like I mentioned, I was 10 years on the men's side. I was 6 months on the women's side, and I became a head coach. And there wasn't a lot of people extending a warm hand out to me to try to tell me what to do. And so I had to navigate through it, almost by myself, just really trying to figure it out and what's going on, and, just the ins and outs of the recruiting game, things of that nature. And then when I get to the court, it's a different ballgame. You're dealing with a different situation from men to women. It's just men are from Mars, Venus, whatever the situation is. But I had to get through it. And I think what helped me get through those situations was my upbringing, my background, being able to just navigate through situations because I live the same situations that most of my African-American females had grown up in. You know, I have a strong female presence in my family. My mom and her sister, my mom has 3 sisters, and, you know, they would all sit around. We have cousins, they're singing, they're laughing, they're joking, they're talking. The culture was the same. So when I had to go and get into a very hard situation with, you know, some student athletes who come from hard backgrounds, okay, I did too. I lived the same thing that they lived. I used to tell them, you know, don't look at my success and where I am and my authority figure. You know, I had to struggle just like you did. I came from the same place as you did. And it really helped me relate with them. It helped me relate with them, to be able to speak their language. You know, I had the same experiences, and it really helped me coach. But there are some challenges because I have 3 daughters. I am all for empowering women. I'm all for it. I want my daughters to have the best opportunities they can in life. But I also know that as a male, I could be that father figure. That father figure to our female players too. And it wasn't going to be better, but I knew it could be equally as strong. And that's what I had to fight, the challenge, not from my players, but sometimes from the narrative outside of my program. And everyone would say, hey, you know, you need a female. And you do. Everyone needs female. Everybody needs that mom. When my children are sick, they don't come to me. They want to go to mom. You know, mom, there's a very strong presence. And I am all for that. But I also want to make sure that we just make sure we get these kids the right kind of upbringing they need, whether it's male, female, or whatever the situation may be. But I did have challenges, but I was able to overcome them because, you know, we just got in and we really worked and became like a big family with all of my programs.
I mean, and you bring up a great point because I'm definitely one of those that's in the media, like, hire women, you know, like I am that person, which, you know, you see it on the other end of the scope, and that could present some challenges for someone like you that's trying to, you know, when you were trying to get into the business, obviously now you're established, but, and saying, hey, no, we have value as well. But there is one piece of advice that I definitely give every young woman I mentor is like, you can't just have mentors that are women, right? Like you got to have diversity in gender. If we're talking about our professional lives looking the way the world does, there's men, there's women, there's people of all colors, of different sexual preferences. So I just feel like the more you surround yourself with different types of diversities, the more balanced and I think overall well-rounded your world will be. And
absolutely, I totally agree with that, and I'm all for hiring women and giving women opportunities. But I tell you what, I was one of the happiest people and screaming from the mountaintops when Niele got her opportunity with the NBA, or Kara got her opportunity with the NBA, not because they were women. I knew they're hell of coaches. All right, I looked down the other end of the bench, and you know, Neil's not down there recruiting; she's coaching her butt off. So when she got that job with Memphis, I was like, woohoo! You know, but now she's back, and I got to contend with that again. But those are the opportunities that, you know, I think everyone should be able to have, whether it's in the NBA, whether it's in women's basketball, whatever your preference is. If it's your passion, and you're going to go out here and help, you know, the youth of the world, so be it. I don't care what gender you are. I don't care what color you are. Go out there, because I have daughters who, you know, are going to be coached by people, and I wanted to be coached by a great person.
Right. Yeah, we definitely need the diversity. I think it's about first balancing the scales. And then, you know, again, like you said, it should just really be whoever's best for the job. But it should not be because you're a woman, you are considered any differently for a position. And that's what's happened for many years. And that's kind of how we've gotten into a little bit of a pickle. Let's change gears a little bit and talk about your campuses and how you're dealing with issues of social justice with your student athletes. And you know, Niele, we'll start with you here. There are going to be conversations, I think, even more than we've ever seen with our student athletes, right? Around how they want to express their passion around social justice issues, whether that's kneeling for the anthem, you know, how they want to use their voices in social media. But let's start with, let's use kneeling for the anthem as an example. How do you balance your convictions and maybe how you feel as a Black coach with the decisions of your university, or what they've enforced, or maybe what they prefer to you to do around such topics?
Yeah, well, I think that I have, since I've been in this role the past 4 or 5 months, have had education and communication with the university, making sure that we're on the same page. And I've been fortunate that the university has been very supportive in myself being vocal of my convictions and my team. And I felt that way back, I think in 2015, when our team decided to wear the I Can't Breathe shirts. We got a lot of slack from that, a lot of negative feedback from that, even from our fans. But that was something that I learned as an assistant coach. When we had what we were passionate about, we came together as a team, we voiced it together, we came out with a unified message, and we rolled with it. And I was fortunate that the university was supportive of that initiative. And I feel like it's the same way here now being a head coach. But I've had experience by being a part of, that initiative, social justice initiative that we did back in 2015. And so now in this role, because I've had that experience and I'm fortunate to have the support of the University of Notre Dame, I can continue using my platform in the way that I want, and I can continue to support my team in using that platform, and pushing them to use their platform and their voice. And so that part has been, I'm appreciative that I can say that I can follow through with what I want to say. And my team can. And I know that's different some places, but again, like education and communication with the university and also with my team is how I'm going to continue approaching social justice in the way that I present what's important to me and what's important to my team.
So you kind of had that opportunity as an assistant to see how that was handled and the response to it. And even in some senses, now your university understands where the women's basketball program stands. And so you were able to come in and just kind of further that conversation. Coach Cooley, how about when you have to have that conversation for the first time as a head coach, and it's, my players want to kneel, and there may be some different thoughts either in your department or at the university level. How do you handle that?
Well, I mean, I'm very blessed, and I'm supported by our president, our board, and our athletic director. And I think you have to over communicate the importance of someone's voice, in particular, a young voice. And today, our young voices are so powerful because of their ability to get information quickly versus when we were their age. We didn't have access to the level of information on our phone or tablet or whatever you call these information gatherers that these kids have. And I tell our players, their voice is powerful. I want them, before they do anything, understand why they're doing it. I think they need to be educated, or we need to educate them, or they have the information before they just follow what they think the norm is. Make sure, because there is slack, you're going to get some pushback. The Big East just came out with the Black Lives Matters patch. And I've gotten probably 3 or 4 emails. And, there's some pushback. And it's not so much the protests, the violence or whatever. Those are not protests. Those are angry men and women, of which they should be. They should be angry. Yet this Black Lives Matters movement that we're trying to is to bring awareness of injustice across the board. Yeah. That's what it's about, bringing light to it. Anything that takes away from that, all lives do matter. They do. No kidding. Yet when you really break this down, anything that will take away from Black men and women of what we have to go through when we're pulled over. And I am married to an ex-police officer who's the greatest thing in the world. Not every coach is bad. Not every cop is bad. Not every school is bad, but there are bad people in those organizations. And we shouldn't all be lumped in there. So if our kids have a voice, stand by them, let them know you got their back, yet make sure they're educated so that when there is some conversation, they can articulate their point to make sure people understand where they're coming from.
Kenny.
Education. It's strong. And when you say educate, you can't educate just by talking about it once or twice. You have to have strong conversations. And when the Black Lives Matter movement started in 2016, I think it was, we had some very strong conversations with our kids. We went on a retreat, and I opened it up by becoming vulnerable myself, sharing my experiences with the kids. Again, I think I mentioned it before. They only knew me as Coach Brooks, head Coach Brooks, successful head Coach Brooks. And I had to open myself up to them and tell them about the struggles that I had their age. as Ed said, I've been pulled over many times. I've been pulled over and I've had a cop ask me, how did you afford this car? Do you have drugs in the car? Okay, well, you can go, because there was no traffic violation. He had no reason to pull me over other than the fact that I was Black. I shared those experiences with my kids as we talked about what was going on in America back in 2016. This is when Colin Kaepernick really, opened the world's eyes up to the kneeling. And, as Ed said, they get information so quickly. Sometimes it's like, okay, well, I want to do that too. All right, but we have to say, why are you doing that? Okay, why are you doing that? Okay, so, and okay, this is what you do. You feel very strong in your conviction. I respect that. I understand that. Now it's like a scouting report. When we go out and we're going to play Notre Dame, we don't just go over what we're going to do. We also go over what Notre Dame's going to do. All right, so now once we figured out what we wanted to do, okay, now you have to understand there's going to be pushback. All right, and you have to understand what this pushback is going to be, and you have to be able to understand it before you try to attack it is a strong word, but you can't just go at it angry, because now you're going to have an argument. Now you're going to have two sides that are just going to be arguing, and no one's going to understand what we're actually fighting for. And all three of us are at predominantly white institutions who have strong donor bases who give lots of money for us to be able to operate. And we had to make sure we educated our kids that, okay, understand, they're going to be upset, and they think they have a right, because they do donate a lot of money. They do help this operation. All right. They do help fund your scholarship. There's no such thing as a free scholarship. That we have to all fundraise for that money to get paid for that scholarship. And so they're going to have their side. You're going to have your side. So we're going to both have to have a conversation, not an argument, a conversation about what our convictions are, what we're strong about. And then we're going to have to try to meet in the middle. But I don't want you to bend unless you really want to bend. I want you to understand what you're fighting for. And we had to really talk to them about that. And because we had to let them go by themselves, they would just kind of maybe gone what social media said, but educating why there might be pushback, and they understood that, and it helped us really get through it.
One of the saddest things to watch, I think, over the last few months has been student athletes of color observing the comments and some of the things that the boosters have had to say about the Black Lives Matter movement, some of their program supporters. It's come, I think, to some of the student athletes as a shock, right? Because you kind of feel like, your fans and, your supporters and your athletic staff, like everyone is together, like go Hokies or go Fighting Irish or, go Friars. But there's been a lot of division, right, that we've seen happen. And I feel really bad for student athletes that, again, have come to the realization that maybe a lot of the supporters of the program are happy about the points they score, or the rebounds or the assists, but not so willing to acknowledge the challenges that they face outside of their experiences as athletes, those challenges that they experience as humans, as Black men and women. And that's been a tough dynamic to watch. And I guess to that point, there's research that shows that Black student athletes at predominantly white institutions have to handle elements of isolation that negatively impact their success in college. How do you help your athletes navigate life at institutions in a situation, that you too are familiar with the whole dynamic that can exist on such a campus? And anyone can start, whoever.
I can speak on that. I'm on year 27, of which 25 have been at predominantly Catholic schools, predominantly white schools. I went to a Catholic school, so I would bump that up to 33 years of being one of very few. And what I try to educate our men and women that are non-white is go out and be part of something. You don't need to isolate. Go out and be part of a community. Go out and, introduce yourself. Let people know who you are. You're not just an athlete here. You're a student. You're a person. You're trying to learn. You want to know who they are. And then, like Coach Brooks was saying, give them some of your own personal struggles to where you were when you were in their seat. Insecure, nervous, afraid, in the barriers you had to break down. And we're all on this because we had a lot of courage. We weren't afraid to fail, and we were going to challenge the status quo. You're not going to treat me that way. Hell no, you're not treating me that way. That's when the urbanites come out. You know, you're going to respect what I'm about to tell you, okay? And then educate, continue to educate. That word comes up more and more and more. So we tell our players to make sure they do that. Hold doors for someone. Ask somebody how their day's going. Hey, that color looks nice on you. Hey, you want to come to the game? Give a ticket away. Humanize yourself by being normal. You don't have to take a step back. Sit in the front seat. Ask a question. Take your hat off. Don't go to class with your headphones on. Pull your pants up. Be respectful. Say thank you. Say please. Those are just civility things that sometimes we got to educate our men and women that come. I know I wouldn't have went to college if I wasn't an athlete. At least I would have tried to go, but I don't know if I could afford it, of which many of our student athletes are probably in the same boat. I didn't come from a two-parent home. Many of my players don't come. Now, some of them do, but not all. Not all. When you look at football and basketball, we have the largest amount of single parents that raise us, not parents, guardians, uncles, aunts, you know, neighbors. I think you educate your kids on it's okay. It's okay to be different. And your difference is going to make you really, really powerful.
Niele or Kenny, anything to add on that?
I go by my experience. I grew up in Waynesboro, Virginia, small rural area. When I went to school, it was predominantly white. It was probably 95% white. And as I got older in my classes, I became always the only black kid in my class. You know, I had to deal with situations where we're in history and we get to start talking about slavery, and everyone looked at me, you know, and, you know, what do you think? I'm like, I wasn't there, you know. Right, I wasn't there. But those were experiences that I had growing up with in a predominantly white school. I went to James Madison University. Again, 90% white. I had to learn. And like Ed said, I didn't seclude myself. I didn't say, hey, I'm just going to go over here and hang with this. I wanted to learn. I wanted to learn what the university had to offer. All right. When I walked into a room, you know, maybe my experiences growing up, it gave me confidence. But hey, you're gonna know who Kenny Brooks is. Right. You're not gonna know who that black kid is over there that's sitting in the corner. You're gonna know who Kenny Brooks is. And I was very confident in that. And so as I went on through college, and as Ed said, I sat in front. You know, I tried to speak. I tried to present myself well. Probably is the reason that I was hired at James Madison, because so many people knew me from my experiences and the way that I interacted. And so from that, I tried to teach it to my players. When I was on the men's side, I used to always say those things, you know, pull your pants up, take those earphones off, sit in the front, stop, do this, you know. And then when I get on the women's side, okay, it's like present yourself well so that they get to know you. They get to know you, the person, and not you by the color of your skin. And I played off of all of my experiences of that. And I think that's what's really helped me to this day. You know, I can go interact with, you know, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're white, you're black, you're mixed, whatever the situation is, because of experiences of just really teaching kids how to be themselves. And that's what we really tell all of our kids here. Go to the common area where everyone hangs, not just one certain group, where everyone hangs. Introduce somebody, learn somebody outside of your sport, learn somebody outside of athletics. You know, those are some of my best friends that I have. When I was in college, they didn't even play ball. But I learned to go out and just introduce myself.
Gail, how do you help your Black athletes, student athletes, integrate into a predominantly white campus? What is your advice to them?
Yeah, and I mean, I agree. They both said the same things that I say to my student athletes, and I give them my experiences of how I navigated through white. You know, I had white roommates, you know, in college. I tried to engulf myself in different different groups on campus, and just to get kind of outside of that athletic bubble. You know, I tried to do that as a student athlete, so I talked about my experiences. And I was fortunate as a student athlete here at Notre Dame that I had a diverse coaching staff, and that's just something I want to bring up. I had 3 African-American female coaches here at Notre Dame, in Letitia Bowen, Coquise Washington, and Carol Owens. And so that was the way that I had an opportunity to have just support while I was on campus. And so now in this head coaching role, I've been fortunate to be able to have a diverse staff. And so, my players can relate to them, but also continue to tell them to make sure that they have those relationships outside of the staff and the athletic bubble that they're in. So that was just something I wanted to bring up, just having a diverse staff. When I was, as a student athlete here at Notre Dame, I'm fortunate to say that my players, my team also has a diverse staff that I have, and I'm blessed for that.
That's very important. I mean, that is huge because, I went to an all-white university in Wake Forest, and I remember coming to campus, and I was in a dorm with some white women that had never been around a Black person, like literally, like, right, Coach Cooley, right? So, I feel like I should have had a course on just how to deal with those dynamics alone. I remember one thing in particular, and this is more the socioeconomic side of things, but I had a girl that lived on my hall that had a Mercedes Benz, and I could barely afford deodorant. That was, I was just trying to figure out how I was going to go to practice, not smelling bad. But those were just the levels to it. And specifically, I was grateful that I had a Black woman as my head coach, Charlene Curtis. So when it came to, Coach Curtis, I got to send some money home to my mother. This little bit of Pell Grant I'm getting, having those discussions, or whether it's, where am I going to get my hair done? Right. Or all of those things that, may seem small or insignificant, but for the confidence and the well-being of a young Black woman in an environment where she already feels like estranged, it's like, where can we find the resources? And that's one thing that I would say to any head coach that is at a predominantly white institution, is to seek out the resources that will help with that transition for your Black athletes, right? Like whether it's the, Black Students Association or whatever it may be on your campus, like how can you already have those resources set, or know where those places are that your Black athletes can go to feel accepted, to have conversations where they feel threatened, where they feel like things aren't being addressed. Like, I just feel like you can't talk enough. Like, my mother wanted to hear about that in the recruiting process. Right. Like, where can she go? So I think that's really awesome that you had assistant coaches that were Black women where you can have those conversations. Okay, we're hitting our last topic here. We've got about 10 minutes left. Don't forget, if you have a question for any of our coaches, you can drop it in the chat. We've got a couple there. We've got a couple questions in the chat, a couple in the Q&A section, wherever you want to put it. I do have my eyes there. But let's talk for a moment in this last 10 minutes about the underrepresentation of Black coaches. And there is this notion that it's about who you know, right? And it's clear that there are not enough decision makers who know Black coaches, or there are not enough decision makers of color that may bring a different dynamic to the room where decisions are being made in hiring. How can Black coaches get in the rooms to network with decision makers and put themselves on that short list to be hired as a head coach? And we can start whoever wants to jump in.
I don't mind starting that off. Again, we alluded to this earlier, is you got to let people know who you are. To be hired too, you got to come from a successful program too. I would say somewhat, where there's a lot of eyes on you as well. And you have to introduce yourself to athletic directors when you're on the road, senior women administrators, other coaches, find a way to who's in charge. Now, there's a lot of search firms right now. Get the names of the search firms, send your name into them. Hey, I'm Ed Cooley. I'm the, assistant coach at Boston College or the University of Rhode Island. I want to be a head coach. I need your help. Do not be afraid to ask for help. And when you do receive the help, are you prepared to move forward? I think you have to over-prepare. But I always go back to, I watched and learned everything Coach Skinner did. In my 10 years as an assistant coach for him, every game for 10 years that he coached, I was the last person next to him in the locker room, on the bus, on the plane, and I would just listen. I went to his press conferences. I just said, I want to do that. And I want to learn from the best. And I don't think people do that right now. I don't think some of our young men and women take the time and do the dirty work. Listen, sit there, shut the hell up, right? Be attentive, ask questions, and then go put yourself out there. Let everybody know you want to be a head coach. I did. I did not want to be an assistant coach anymore. I was done. Done there, done that. Let me see if I can get fired on my own, right? Let me try to call my own timeout, right? They're on an 8-0 run. Coach, call a timeout, man. We're getting our ass kicked. So timeout, come on. So I think you got to put yourself out there, but I think you have to learn who is in charge and ask them questions. Go right to the top. That's my advice.
And I'll add on, as an assistant coach, the professional development after the season allowed for those type of introductions. I went to, and I guess I'll put a plug for Felicia Hall Allen. She has lots of professional development after the season where she has senior administrators and athletic directors that are at those events where you can introduce yourself and make those connections. And so I would say that's what I try to do every year to network, to get my name out, and just have those introductions and building relationships with the decision makers. And sometimes on campus, like you said, that's going to talk to your athletic director or administration. And then, you know, while you're playing different teams, introducing yourself to athletic directors that are at practices or at NCAA tournaments. Like, there's opportunities there. You got to step outside your comfort zone. But I also feel that I met a lot of, I mean, at the time, a couple of years ago, was Villa 7. That was an opportunity, professional development, where they had roundtables or I forgot what they called, like short professional development, where you had an opportunity to meet multiple athletic directors who was at that event. But that, I mean, I don't think they run Villa 7 anymore, but that's just to say there are opportunities out there. You have to search for them. You know, build that relationship, make those connections, or have your head coach help you connect with different decision makers. And I think that's, like you said, Coach, like that's how you get your name out there, because you have to do the work. And I was fortunate, like you, to be able to watch a Hall of Fame coach as well. So I'm watching who she's talking to and she introduced me to a lot of people. But it's the network of who you know, but you got to put yourself out there.
I love that dynamic of administrators and want-to-be head coaches in rooms together, just learning in a non-threatening environment. Sorry about that, Kenny.
That's okay. I didn't want to be the buzzkill on this whole thing anyway, but you know, my situation was a lot different. You know, the men's side is a lot different than the women's side. On the typically speaking, ADs are more familiar with men's coaches than they are really digging deep on the women's side. I was at James Madison for 14 years. We won 6 championships. We went to the NCAA tournament 7 times. All-time winningest coach, over 300 wins, you know, yada, yada, yada. I got 2 in-person interviews for next level jobs. And ironically, both of them were by African-American male athletic directors. And, you know, they were the ones who called me in. And you know, a lot of people used to say, well, why aren't you here? Why aren't you there? I remember a lot of black male coaches would come up to me, assistant coaches, and they would say, well, you're doing it for us. You're doing it for us. You're carrying the torch. We need you to do this. And I used to always think to myself, I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it for me. You know, but the older and older I get, and the more I climb up the ladder a little bit and get to this level here and look at the people who are looking up to me and asking me questions and wanting this and that, you know, I learned that I am doing it for them. I am doing it for them because my success will help them get noticed. And so and I say the ones who aren't fortunate enough, and Neil's a great coach, and she's had it wonderful because, you know, Muffet is fantastic and Muffet knows everyone. Yeah. You know, but I didn't have that person who was guiding me. My guy was Lefty Drizel, who was on the men's side, who was done. And I didn't have that, you know, I didn't have that. So I had to fight and scratch and claw for everything. And then as a result, I found out what I'm doing, because you look at it, there are 2 black male coaches on the BCS level, me and Quentin Hilsman. And you know, very rarely do we get to move up and move on. There's a lot of times where we feel like if we don't get it right now, we might not get another opportunity. So for me, I feel like I'm carrying a torch and to be able to go out and try to network and to talk to young coaches and be able to point them in the right direction and see what they need to do, because a lot of times it is who you know that's going to give you an opportunity. But once you get that opportunity, you have to be able to take advantage of it.
You make a great point, Coach, because when you look at what Ed expressed from his experience, that's on the mid side, Niele's at the Power 5 level consistently throughout her career, but you coming from a school like James Madison, I do think that there is just not as much awareness, research, education, homework, whatever you want to call it, oftentimes on the women's side as it pertains to the hiring, you know, and I think there's less of that chance, if you will, that a mid-major coach gets the looks from Power 5 level that they should be getting on the women's side. You see it happen so much on the men's, but women, not so much. So you make a great point in that, you know, and one thing I think, at least that we've tried to do on the media side, and I know others like Debbie and Carolyn try to do this, is, you know, when there's a job open, how can we get some names? We're the ones traveling to practices and assistants, and we see, you know, other coaches, and we've kind of got a pulse, like how can we get names out there to kind of help some of these athletic directors that when it comes to women's basketball, you know, I mean, how many ADs would come to a Final Four, women's Final Four versus a men's Final Four? You know, like those kind of things, like interacting and seeing what's happening and keeping a pulse on sport. So we only got 2 minutes left. And what I will do is take a question from our chat. And then if you guys have any words that you want to share to close us out, that would be great as well. And it seems like the most common theme question-wise is about mentoring. And how do we find mentors that are Black or brown or look like us? That is really, the more common theme amongst it. How do you suggest finding a valuable mentor?
My name's Ed Cooley, 203. My phone number is 401-871-3600. ecooley1@providence.edu. If I can help anybody that's on this seminar call, I'll be more than happy to share any experience. Use me. I don't know how good I'll be, but I got a big ass mouth and I know how to talk.
Thanks.
I would echo that. I was fortunate to have great mentors, and I guess that would be my last point, is to surround yourself with great people, great mentors. And outside of Coach McGraw being my advocate, I was surrounding myself with Coquise Washington, Carol Owens that are on my staff. I leaned on them as an assistant coach, and now I have them with me, but I want to move it forward and pay it forward. So I definitely want to be helpful in connecting everyone on this call, and I would love to be a mentor. You guys can reach out to me. I will help as much as I can and share my experiences. So I'll put my information in the chat.
I echo the sentiments as well. I'll do whatever I can to help anyone. Surround yourself with people that you feel like you can learn from. It doesn't have to be the same type person. You can pull, I find myself, I'm like a mixture of like probably 20 different coaches. You know, I'm myself, but I find myself saying some of the things that Lefty would say, and I would kind of tickle. I would laugh at myself because, you know, that's something I pulled from him. So surround yourself with people that you feel like you can learn from. And we all do it a different way. And my way is no better than any of others' way. Just pull what you really like from it, and that'll help you become the coach you want to be.
Coach, you were right. I hired one of my mentors in Jeff Battle, LaChina, who says to say hello to you, who's a little bit older than I am. And, you know, he put his arm around me some 25 years ago and said, do the right thing and you'll become a head coach. I thought he was crazy when he told me that. Lo and behold, 8 years later, I became a head coach.
There you go.
I love Jeff Battle. He was Skip Prosper's assistant when I was at Wake Forest. Such a great, great, great guy. Please tell him I said hello. And I also, in closing, just want to share, I mean, Kenny, Niele, you guys have to put up with me all the time. Coach Cooley, it's been so great to have you in this space, but going back about 5 or 6 years, I called my first ever men's college basketball game, and it was a Providence game for Big East on FS1. And it was myself and Tiffany Green, who's another young Black woman of color. We were scared to death, right? We had never called a men's college basketball before. We go to campus, we go to Providence practice. Coach Cooley, I mean, I get just choke up just thinking about this. He was the kindest person to Tiffany and I throughout that whole process. He called us in his office, sat us down. You need water. Here's the scouting report. What information do you need? How can I help you? I mean, he treated us like we were Raft. I don't know how he treats Raft coming in, but he treated us like we were legendary men's college basketball coach commentators. And I will never forget that experience. I've been a huge fan of yours for many years since, and of your program. But those are the gestures, especially for those of us who are, Black or brown men or women who, are walking into new spaces, are trying to find our place of success, are trying to leave the door open for those that are coming behind us. It's those gestures of someone like you making us feel like we belong that can change the trajectory of someone's career. So I just want to thank you for that.
Thank
Thank you for your time. Kenny, Niele, Ed, awesome. Hopefully our audience learned a lot, got some good nuggets. Shantiana, thank you. WBCA, thank you. Jeff, and thank you to everyone for hanging out with us. Hopefully you learned something, and we hope you have a great day.
Thank you. Stay safe.
Everyone.